My twin sister showed up at my door, covered in bruises. Her husband's brothers had been beating her for a year. So we traded places and I made sure they'd never forget. My world shattered the moment I opened my Seattle apartment door at 2:47 a.m. My twin sister, Maya, stood there, a roadmap of brutality etched onto her face, and I knew nothing would ever be the same. The air hung heavy with the chill of a Seattle night, but the cold radiating from her was far deeper. Her left eye was a grotesque purple bloom, swollen shut. Her lip was split, crusted with dried blood. When she tried to smile, I saw the chip in her front tooth. "Hey, Chloe," she whispered, her voice raw, "sorry to just show up like this." I pulled her inside without a word, my hands trembling as I guided her to the couch. Under the harsh living room light, the damage was worse. Her arms were a tapestry of yellowing bruises layered over fresh ones. Some looked weeks old, others were clearly from tonight. "Who did this to you?" I demanded, already knowing the answer wouldn't be simple. Maya and I are identical twins. Most people still struggle to tell us apart. We're both tall, with the same sharp jaw and dark eyes from our father, the same thick brown hair, though hers was always a bit longer. Growing up, we constantly switched places. Teachers couldn't tell. Our own grandmother mixed us up until we were teenagers. Even now, at 32, if I styled my hair like hers, I could easily pass for her. "It's Ethan's brothers," Maya finally said. "Blake and Liam. They've been doing this for about a year now." My blood turned to ice. Ethan was Maya's husband of 3 years. They'd met at a charity event in Austin, fallen in love fast, and married in a small ceremony our parents adored. At first, everyone loved Ethan. Charming, successful, attentive, the perfect match. But something had shifted over the past year. There was always something off about him I couldn't quite place. Too charming, too quick with excuses, too controlling in ways that were subtle enough to dismiss individually but formed a disturbing pattern when viewed together. Maya had slowly stopped calling, stopped visiting, made excuses for missing holidays. I'd chalked it up to the natural drift when someone gets married. But now, I understood it was far more sinister. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. Maya looked at her hands. "Because Ethan said if I told anyone, it would get worse." And he was right. The one time I mentioned something to a friend, Blake found out. That's when they broke 2 of my ribs. The story came out in fragments over the next few hours. Ethan's family was wealthy. Old money from real estate and construction. His brothers, Blake and Liam, ran the construction side and enforced the family's will. When Ethan married Maya, his family was furious. She wasn't from the right background, didn't have the right pedigree, wasn't the society wife they envisioned for their golden boy. But rather than push Ethan to divorce her, they decided to make Maya's life a living hell until she left voluntarily. The mistreatment started small. Blake showing up at Maya's workplace, making vague threats. Liam cornering her in a parking garage, shoving her around. But over the past year, it had escalated dramatically. They beat her every few weeks, always careful to target areas that could be hidden under clothing. Ethan knew. Ethan encouraged it. In his twisted mind, he believed that if Maya suffered enough, she'd eventually transform into someone the family could accept. More submissive, more willing to stay silent and play the role of the obedient wife who looked pretty at functions and never voiced an opinion. "Why didn't you just leave?" I asked, though I knew the question was more complicated than it sounded. "I tried twice," Maya's voice was hollow. "The first time they found me at a motel and dragged me back. Told me if I ever tried again, they'd harm you. Mom, Dad, everyone I loved. The second time, Ethan had me committed to a psychiatric facility for 72 hours. Told them I was having a mental breakdown. By the time I got out, they'd moved all my things to a new house, changed my phone number, cut me off from everyone." I listened in horror as she described the last year. The isolation, the constant fear, the way Ethan would apologize after every beating, promise it would stop, then stand by while his brothers did it all over again. Maya had become a prisoner in her own marriage. Too afraid to run. Too broken to fight back. So, what changed tonight? I asked. Maya's jaw tightened. Liam got drunk. Really drunk. Started talking about how they were going to finally finish the job. Make it look like an accident. Ethan wasn't there to stop him. And I realized that if I didn't run right then, I was going to die in that house. She'd stolen Ethan's car keys, driven 6 hours through the night, and shown up at my door. It was the bravest thing she'd ever done, and she was terrified it would be the last. I held my sister as she cried, my mind already working through the options. Going to the police seemed obvious, but Maya was right to be hesitant. The family had connections. Lawyers on retainer, judges they donated to. Without concrete evidence, it would be Maya's word against theirs, and they'd spin it as a domestic dispute between estranged spouses. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Maya slept until almost noon, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion after months of hypervigilance. While she rested, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and started making lists. Evidence we'd need, people who might help, weaknesses in the family's armor we could exploit. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother around 10 a.m. Haven't heard from Maya in weeks. Is everything okay? I stared at those words for a long time before typing back a lie. She's fine, just busy with work. I'll have her call you soon. The truth would have to wait. If our parents found out what had been happening, they'd want to fly to Austin immediately, confront Ethan, possibly do something that would land them in jail. I needed time to build a case. Time to plan. Time to make sure that when we struck, the blow would be fatal to Ethan's entire operation. Maya shuffled into the kitchen around 1 p.m., wearing my oversized sweater and looking like a ghost. She'd lost at least 20 pounds since I'd last seen her. The bones of her wrists jutted out sharply, and dark circles under her eyes spoke to countless sleepless nights. Coffee? I offered, already pouring her a cup. She nodded, sinking into a chair. I keep expecting them to burst through the door. Every sound makes me jump. Is that normal after what you've been through? Absolutely. I set the mug in front of her along with a plate of toast. She needed to eat, even if her appetite was gone. Your nervous system has been in fight or flight mode for a year. It's going to take time for it to calm down. We spent that afternoon going through her phone, which she'd managed to grab during her escape. The text messages alone were damning. Threats from Blake, mocking messages from Liam. Ethan's cold instructions about how Maya should behave, what she should wear, who she was allowed to speak to. It painted a picture of absolute control, a systematic dismantling of my sister's autonomy and self-worth. He made me delete most of the really bad ones, Maya admitted. But I started screenshotting them first and emailing them to a burner account he didn't know about. I thought maybe someday I'd need proof. That foresight might save her life. The screenshots showed escalating violence, explicit threats, and Ethan's full knowledge and participation in his brother's mistreatment. Combined with medical records from the times Maya had been forced to seek treatment for her injuries, we had the beginning of a case. But it wasn't enough. I knew from my work in corporate litigation that cases built on documentation alone rarely succeeded against wealthy defendants with teams of lawyers. We needed witnesses, physical evidence, ideally a confession. The first breakthrough came 3 days later when I convinced Maya to let me access her social media accounts. Ethan had been controlling those too, posting cheerful updates about their life together, photos from events Maya barely remembered attending. But buried in her direct messages was a conversation with someone named Haley, a woman who worked as a receptionist at Blake's construction company. Who is this? I asked, showing Maya the thread. Her face softened slightly. Haley was nice to me. She saw Blake shove me into a wall once and actually asked if I was okay. Nobody else in that company ever acknowledged what was happening. I scrolled through their messages. Haley had been cautiously reaching out for months, offering support, sharing small observations about the brothers' behavior. In one message, she mentioned that Liam kept a locked filing cabinet in his office that he wouldn't let anyone else access. "Everybody knows there's something shady in there," she'd written. "The cleaning crew isn't even allowed in his office." A locked filing cabinet, financial records maybe. Or documentation of their other crimes. Either way, it was a lead worth pursuing. I messaged Haley from Maya's account, explaining that she'd left Ethan and was safe with family. Her response came within minutes, a flood of relief and concern. She'd been worried sick, had suspected for months that something terrible was happening, and wanted to help however she could. Over the next week, Haley became our inside source. She photographed documents when she could, recorded conversations between Blake and Liam when they thought no one was listening, compiled a list of city officials who regularly received gifts from the company. The risk she was taking was enormous, but she told me she couldn't live with herself if she didn't do something. "My brother was in an abusive relationship," she confided during one of our phone calls. "He didn't make it out. Maya reminds me of him. I couldn't save my brother, but maybe I can help save your sister." Meanwhile, Maya was slowly beginning to heal. I found a therapist who specialized in domestic violence survivors, and she started seeing her 3 times a week. The first few sessions were brutal. She'd come home hollow-eyed and exhausted, barely able to speak. But gradually, something shifted. She started eating more, sleeping better. The flinching decreased, though it never fully stopped. One evening, about 2 weeks after her arrival, Maya found me in my home office, surrounded by papers and photographs. Evidence of the brothers' crimes covered every surface. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, taking it all in. "You're building a war chest," she observed. "I'm building a bomb," I corrected. "One that's going to blow their entire world apart." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Want to see what we've got?" For the next hour, I walked her through everything. The financial irregularities that pointed to money laundering, the safety violations that had led to worker deaths, the pattern of intimidation and bribery that kept local officials compliant. The recordings Haley had made of Blake discussing their plans to deal with Maya permanently. By the end, Maya was pale but determined. "They're monsters, not just to me, to everyone who crosses their path. Which is why we're not just going to get you free," I said. "We're going to take them down completely." I pulled out a folder I'd been saving. "There's something else you should see." Inside were photographs from the families of workers who died on construction sites. Young men mostly, some with wives and children, all killed by negligence that the company had covered up with cash settlements and legal threats. Their stories had never been told publicly because their families were too afraid or too beaten down to fight. "If we do this right," I said carefully, "we can get justice for them, too. Not just you, all of them." Maya picked up one of the photographs. A young father, Noah, maybe 25, holding a newborn baby. According to our research, he'd fallen from scaffolding that had been improperly secured. The company had paid his widow $50,000 to sign an NDA and go away. "His name was Noah," Maya said quietly, reading the notes I'd attached. "He was trying to save money to buy his first house. He deserved better. They all did, and so do you." Something hardened in my sister's eyes. The defeated, broken woman who'd shown up at my door was still there. But now there was steel underneath. A willingness to fight that I hadn't seen since we were kids standing up to playground bullies. "What do you need me to do?" I wasn't without resources of my own. Over the next week, I called in every favor I had. My colleague Daniel worked in family law and knew exactly how to file emergency protective orders that would actually stick. My old law school roommate, Olivia, was now a private investigator with a talent for finding things people wanted hidden. And my boss, Victoria, a fearsome woman who had built our firm from nothing, agreed to represent Maya pro bono when I explained the situation. What we uncovered was worse than I'd imagined. The construction company that Blake and Liam ran was a front for money laundering. They'd been skimming from city contracts for years, paying off inspectors, cutting corners on safety regulations. 3 workers had died on their sites in the past 5 years, and each death had been quietly settled out of court. Ethan wasn't just complicit in his brother's violence, he was actively helping them cover up corporate crimes. But the most damning evidence came from Liam himself. Olivia managed to get close to him at a bar, flirting just enough to get him talking. With his consent, as an undercover operative working with the state attorney general's office, she recorded him bragging about the beatings, about how they taught Maya to keep her mouth shut, about how they'd do it again if she ever stepped out of line. I had everything I needed to destroy them. But I wanted more. I wanted them to feel what Maya had felt. The fear, the helplessness, the way your own body becomes a map of someone else's cruelty. That's where the switch came in. The idea came to me at 3 a.m. during another sleepless night spent reviewing evidence. I'd been staring at a photograph of Maya and me from college, taken at our graduation. We stood side by side in identical robes, grinning at the camera, and even I had trouble remembering which twin was which. All my life, being an identical twin had been a curiosity, a party trick, something that made for interesting conversation at networking events. Now, for the first time, I saw it as a weapon. I didn't mention the plan to Maya immediately. I spent a few days working through the logistics, identifying the risks, figuring out how to minimize the chances of catastrophic failure. The legal implications were murky at best. What I was contemplating wasn't quite impersonation, since Maya would be giving me explicit permission to act as her, but it existed in a gray area that could get me in trouble if things went wrong. The night I finally broached the subject, Maya had just returned from a particularly difficult therapy session. Her eyes were red, but there was a calmness about her that hadn't been there before. Progress, however painful. I have an idea, I said, pouring us both glasses of wine. You're not going to like it at first, but hear me out. She raised an eyebrow. That's never a good opening. Remember when we were 16 and you convinced me to take your calculus final because you had mono, and I got you a B+ even though you hadn't studied all semester? A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Mr. Patterson never suspected a thing. What does that have to do with anything? I want to do it again. Bigger this time. Much bigger. I laid out the plan in detail. I would go to Austin as Maya, establish that she was back in town, reach out to Blake and Liam, expressing a desire to reconcile, get them alone in a controlled environment, and provoke them into revealing their intentions on recording. Meanwhile, the real Maya would remain safe in Seattle, building an alibi, preparing for the legal battle to come. Her initial reaction was exactly what I'd expected. Absolutely not. Chloe, these men are dangerous. They've already talked about ending my life. If they figure out you're not me, they won't figure it out. We've been fooling people our entire lives. This isn't fooling a substitute teacher or a bartender who doesn't check IDs carefully. This is walking into a room with men who want to commit murder. Her voice cracked. I can't lose you. You're all I have left. I took her hands in mine. You're not going to lose me. I'm not going in unprepared. I've been in contact with someone at the state attorney general's office. They've been investigating the construction company for months, and they're very interested in what we found. If I can get Blake and Liam on tape admitting to assault, threatening murder, anything that demonstrates their pattern of behavior, it gives the prosecutors exactly what they need to move forward. Federal agents, Maya said slowly. You want to turn this into a sting operation. I want to turn this into justice. Real justice, not the kind that gets bargained away in a plea deal or buried under legal technicalities. We argued about it for hours. Maya brought up every possible objection. What if I got hurt? What if the agents didn't arrive in time? What if Blake saw through the disguise immediately? Each concern was valid, and I addressed each one as carefully as I could. By dawn, her resistance had worn down. Not because my arguments had convinced her, but because she understood something fundamental about our situation. The evidence we had was compelling, but it wasn't conclusive. Defense attorneys would pick it apart. Character witnesses would testify to the brothers' good standing in the community. Ethan would claim that Maya was unstable, vindictive, making up stories to hurt him in a divorce proceeding. But a recording of the brothers explicitly admitting to mistreatment, explicitly discussing plans to harm Maya, that was the kind of evidence that couldn't be explained away, that would play in court, in the media, in the court of public opinion, that would guarantee conviction. If you're going to do this, Maya finally said, her voice exhausted but resigned, we need to do it right. You need to know everything about my life there. Every detail. If you slip up on something small, they'll realize something's wrong. For the next 2 weeks, my sister became my teacher. She walked me through her daily routines, the coffee shops and grocery stores and gym where she'd been a regular. Described the layout of the house she'd shared with Ethan, the location of every room, every piece of furniture, every hiding spot she'd used to cry where her husband couldn't hear her. She taught me how Ethan liked Maya to stand, to speak, to defer. The way she was expected to drop her gaze when Ethan's brothers entered a room. The subtle flinch that had become automatic whenever someone raised their voice. Embodying these behaviors made me sick to my stomach, but I practiced them until they felt natural, until I could become my sister's broken self as easily as slipping on a coat. The hardest part was learning to move like someone who expected to be hit. Maya showed me the way her shoulders hunched forward. The way her hands stayed close to her body, ready to protect vulnerable areas. The way her eyes constantly scanned for threats, never resting, never feeling safe. This is how I lived every day, she said quietly as I practiced the posture in front of a mirror. This is what they turned me into. I wrapped my arms around her and held on tight. Never again. After this, you never have to be this person again. Meanwhile, my colleagues had been making progress on the legal front. Daniel filed emergency motions that would freeze Ethan's assets the moment our operation concluded. Olivia continued gathering intelligence, building profiles on every member of the family, identifying weaknesses we could exploit. Victoria personally reviewed every piece of evidence, ensuring that nothing we collected could be thrown out on procedural grounds. The State Attorney General's office assigned Agent Ramirez to coordinate with us. She was a formidable woman in her 50s, sharp-eyed and unsentimental, with decades of experience in organized crime prosecution. During our first meeting, she studied me with undisguised skepticism. "You understand this isn't a game," she said. "These men have likely harmed others before. If this goes wrong, no amount of backup is going to save you. I understand. And you're willing to proceed anyway because your sister matters more to you than your own safety. Because my sister matters more to me than anything." Agent Ramirez held my gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then let's make sure we don't waste your courage on a failed operation." She walked me through the technical aspects, the wire I'd be wearing, disguised as a medical device for a supposed heart condition, the code words I could use to signal distress, the locations of every agent who would be stationed in and around the warehouse, the extraction plan if things went sideways. "Your job is to get them talking," she emphasized. "That's all. Don't try to be a hero. Don't provoke them into violence. Just get the confession and let us handle the rest." The final piece of preparation was the hardest. Maya and I spent an afternoon in my bathroom, scissors and hair clippers spread across the counter. My hair had been long for years, falling past my shoulders in waves that I'd always considered my best feature. Now it would have to go. "Are you sure about this?" Maya asked, holding the scissors with visible reluctance. "It's just hair. It'll grow back." She cut carefully, precisely matching her own style as closely as possible. When she finished, I looked in the mirror and saw my sister staring back at me. The resemblance was uncanny, unsettling even. For a moment, I wasn't sure where I ended and she began. Wow, Maya breathed. It's like looking in a mirror. That's kind of the point. She reached out and touched my shortened hair, her expression unreadable. You're really doing this for me. I would do anything for you. I thought you knew that by now. Her eyes welled with tears, but she blinked them back. When this is over, I'm going to find a way to repay you. I don't know how, but I will. Just be happy. That's all the repayment I need. Maya and I had always been able to fool people when we tried. Same height, same build, same face. With the right haircut and some practice with her mannerisms, I could pass as my sister for short periods. The plan was risky, probably illegal, definitely unethical. But when I pitched it to Maya, she agreed without hesitation. I flew to Austin under her name using her ID. Checked into a hotel near the house where Ethan lived. Bought clothes similar to what Maya usually wore. Cut my hair. Practiced walking the way she walked, dropping my voice into her register. By the time I was done, even I had trouble recognizing myself in the mirror. The first test came at a coffee shop where Maya had been a regular. The barista greeted me by name, asked if I wanted the usual. I nodded, paid with Maya's card, and walked out with my heart pounding. It had worked. Over the next few days, I laid the groundwork. Let myself be seen around the neighborhood. Attended a church service that Ethan's family belonged to, sitting in the back and slipping out before anyone could talk to me. Made sure that multiple witnesses could place Maya in Austin during the time frame that would matter later. Then I called Blake. My voice shook as I spoke, and that wasn't entirely an act. Told him I was done running. Wanted to come home. Wanted to make things right with Ethan. Could we meet somewhere private to talk things through? Blake agreed immediately. Sounded almost gleeful. Suggested an abandoned warehouse their company owned on the outskirts of the city. Midnight. Come alone. I had no intention of going alone. The day before the meeting, I called Maya from my hotel room. Her voice was tight with anxiety, and I could picture her pacing the floor of my Seattle apartment, unable to sit still. You don't have to do this, she said for what must have been the 100th time. We can find another way. There is no other way. Not one that guarantees they go to prison for as long as they deserve. I checked my reflection in the hotel mirror, making small adjustments to my posture. Shoulders down, chin lowered, eyes slightly averted. Maya's beaten-down body language was becoming second nature. Besides, I've already come this far. Agent Ramirez says everything is in position. I keep having nightmares about getting a call that something went wrong, that they figured it out. And you, hey, listen to me. I let some of my own personality seep back into my voice. The confident, unshakable sister she'd always known. I've prepared for every scenario. The agents know what they're doing. And Blake and Liam are too arrogant to even consider the possibility that someone might be playing them. Their own egos are our greatest advantage. A long pause. Then softly, I love you, Chloe. I love you, too. And tomorrow night, you're going to get to watch the news coverage of their arrest from the safety of home. Trust me. After we hung up, I spent an hour reviewing the warehouse blueprints that Agent Ramirez had provided. 3 entrances, multiple sight lines for the hidden agents, a surveillance van parked 2 blocks away that would be monitoring my wire in real time. The setup was as good as we could make it. I practiced my lines in front of the mirror. The tremor in my voice. The desperate hope of someone who had been broken down until surrender felt like the only option. The way Maya would have sounded after a year of systematic mistreatment, crawling back to her tormentors because she couldn't imagine any other way to survive. It was the performance of my life, and failure wasn't an option. What Blake and Liam didn't know was that the state attorney general had been building a case against their company for months. Our evidence had accelerated their timeline. A raid was already planned for later that week, but when I explained what was happening, they agreed to move it up. Undercover agents would be positioned in the warehouse before I arrived. Everything would be recorded. All I had to do was get them talking. The night was cold and clear. I parked Maya's car outside the warehouse, checked the wire taped to my chest, and walked through the door like I was walking to my own execution. Inside, the space was cavernous and dark. Blake stood near a stack of wooden pallets, his arms crossed. Liam lounged against a forklift, a baseball bat resting against his leg. Well, Blake said, stepping forward. Looks like a little runaway came crawling back. I kept my head down, shoulders hunched. Made myself smaller. Became Maya in every way I could manage. I shouldn't have left, I mumbled. I know that now. Liam laughed. Damn right you shouldn't have. Ethan's been worried sick. We all have. Family takes care of family, you know. And your family now, whether you like it or not. They circled me like predators, and I let them. Flinched when Blake grabbed my arm, whimpered when Liam pressed the bat against my shoulder. All the wire captured every word, every threat, every admission. You know what we're going to have to do, Blake said, his voice low and menacing. Can't have you running off again. Can't have you talking to anyone. Ethan says you need another lesson. A permanent one this time. Please, I whispered. I won't tell anyone. I promise. Liam stepped closer. See, that's what you said last time and the time before that. But you're still causing problems. Still making Ethan look bad. His daddy is real unhappy with how things have been going. Says, maybe it's time to cut our losses. The implications were clear. They weren't planning to beat me. They were planning to end my life. That's when the agents moved in. The doors burst open simultaneously. Flashlights cutting through the darkness. Voices shouting commands to get on the ground. Blake tried to run and got tackled by 3 officers. Liam swung his bat at the nearest agent and was tossed before he could make contact. Within 60 seconds, both brothers were face down in handcuffs, screaming about their lawyers and their rights and how they were going to sue everyone involved. I stood perfectly still through all of it, my hands raised until Agent Ramirez approached me and nodded. The signal that it was over, that I was safe. But I wasn't done yet. The next morning, I walked into the police station where Blake and Liam were being held. They'd been charged with attempted assault, conspiracy to commit murder, and about a dozen financial crimes that would keep them in prison for decades. But I wanted them to see my face one more time. I asked for a moment in the interrogation room where Liam was waiting for his lawyer. The detective hesitated, but Agent Ramirez authorized it. Recording everything, of course. Liam looked up when I walked in, and confusion flickered across his face. Something was different, but he couldn't place it. His eyes narrowed as I sat down across from him. You look different, he muttered. Did something to your hair or whatever? I smiled. A real smile. Nothing like Maya's nervous expressions. You know what's funny, Liam? You spent a year mistreating the wrong person. His confusion deepened. What the hell are you talking about? I leaned forward. Maya has been in Seattle for the past 2 weeks. Safe, protected, healing from everything you did to her. The person you were planning to end last night? That was me. Understanding dawned slowly on his face. His mouth opened, then closed. Opened again. You are. You're not, I'm her twin sister. Chloe. I let the word sink in. And I just got you and your brother to confess to everything on Federal Wire. Your company is finished. Your family's reputation is destroyed, and Ethan has already been served with divorce papers along with a restraining order that covers every member of your pathetic excuse for a family. Liam's face went from confused to enraged in an instant. He lunged across the table, hands reaching for my throat. The detective burst through the door and slammed him back into his chair before he could touch me. "Add assault to the charges," I said calmly, standing up. "And make sure you note that he attacked what he thought was his sister-in-law. Shows a pattern of behavior, don't you think?" I walked out of that station feeling lighter than I had in years. The case against the brothers was airtight. Olivia's recordings, combined with a federal wire and the financial evidence we'd uncovered, painted a damning picture. Their lawyers tried to argue entrapment, but the judge wasn't having it. The family's money couldn't buy their way out of this one. Maya watched the trial from the safety of our parents' home in Arizona. Our mother and father, finally understanding the extent of what had happened, had transformed into fierce protectors. Dad hired private security for their property. Mom spent hours on the phone with victim advocacy organizations, learning everything she could about supporting abuse survivors. They'd failed to see the signs before, but they weren't going to fail Maya again. The guilty verdicts came down on a Thursday afternoon in late September. Blake received 23 years for conspiracy, assault, and a laundry list of financial crimes. Liam got 18, his sentence slightly reduced because he tried to cooperate near the end. Ethan pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for testimony against his brothers and received 5 years, though he'd served them in a minimum security facility that felt like a country club compared to where Blake and Liam were going. The day the sentencing was announced, Maya called me. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in years. "You saved my life, Chloe. You literally saved my life." I thought about the risks I'd taken, the laws I'd bent, the terror I'd felt standing in that warehouse, wondering if the agents would reach me in time. None of it mattered compared to hearing my sister sound like herself again. "You would have done the same for me," I told her. "That's what family is supposed to be." 6 months later, Maya moved to Seattle permanently. She got a job at a nonprofit that helps domestic abuse survivors navigate the legal system. Uses her experience to counsel others who feel trapped, who believe there's no way out, who've been convinced by their abusers that no one will believe them. She's good at it. Really good. We have dinner together every Sunday now. Sometimes our parents drive down to join us. The conversations are lighter than they used to be. Maya laughs more, tells jokes. Recently started dating someone new, a kindergarten teacher named David, who treats her like the kind, brilliant person she's always been. The nightmares haven't stopped entirely. Maya still wakes up in cold sweats sometimes, convinced that Blake is standing over her bed. Still flinches when someone moves too fast behind her. Trauma doesn't disappear just because justice was served. But healing is possible. Recovery is real. And sometimes the people who harm us get exactly what they deserve. Ethan's family lost everything in the aftermath. The construction company went bankrupt after the criminal investigation exposed the full scope of their corruption. City contracts were cancelled. Civil lawsuits piled up from the families of workers who died on unsafe sites. The patriarch, who'd orchestrated so much of the incident from the shadows, had a stroke 3 months after the trial and now requires round-the-clock care in a nursing home that costs more than his decimated fortune can afford. I don't celebrate their suffering. Not exactly, but I won't pretend to feel sorry for them either. The legal system failed my sister for a year. Her husband, the person who should have protected her above all others, instead enabled her torment. The structures that should have caught the mistreatment, reported it, stopped it, simply looked the other way because money and influence made blindness easier than action. So, I made my own justice, used the tools I had, the skills I developed, the face I shared with my sister, walked into danger wearing her skin, and walked out with the evidence that would set her free. Some people might call what I did reckless, illegal, maybe even wrong. But when I think about Maya standing at my door that night, her face a roadmap of violence, her spirit nearly broken by a year of systematic torture, I know I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. Blake and Liam will spend the best years of their lives behind bars. Ethan will never be able to harm Maya again. and my sister finally has the chance to build the life she deserves. That's not revenge. That's justice. And they should be grateful I stopped there. Because the first time I saw those bruises on my twin's face, my instinct wasn't to call a lawyer. It was something far more primal, far more permanent. The only reason those brothers are alive to serve their sentences is because Maya asked me not to destroy them completely. Asked me to trust the system, even after everything. So I did. Mostly. But they should know, wherever they are right now, that the sister who fooled them so completely is still out there, still watching, still ready. They hurt my sister for a year. I made sure they'd never forget what happened when they finally crossed the wrong family. Some lessons you only learn once. Update, 3 months later. I wasn't planning on posting an update, but a lot of people asked about Maya, and I figured I owed everyone some closure. Maya is thriving. Actually thriving, not just surviving. She and Cole got engaged last month. Nothing fancy, just a quiet proposal during a hike in the mountains. Maya cried. Cole cried. I cried when Maya called to tell me, though I'll deny it if anyone asks. The nonprofit where Maya works just received a major grant that will let them expand their services to 3 more counties. She's been promoted twice since starting there, and her supervisors keep telling me that survivors respond to her in ways they don't with other counselors. There's something about having lived through it yourself, I guess, something that makes your compassion more credible. Our parents have been surprisingly wonderful through all of this. Mom joined a support group for family members of abuse survivors and has become something of an advocate in her community. Dad, who I never thought would talk about anything emotional, gave a speech at a fundraiser for Maya's nonprofit that had the entire room in tears. People can change, even stubborn, set in their ways people you've written off as hopeless. As for me, I made partner at the firm. Victoria recommended me personally, citing my creative problem-solving abilities and commitment to justice. I'm pretty sure she knows more about what happened than she lets on, but she's never asked directly, and I've never volunteered. Some things are better left unspoken between colleagues. Ethan tried to contact Maya from prison about 2 months ago. Sent a letter full of apologies and explanations and requests for forgiveness. Maya didn't even open it, just handed it to me and asked me to handle it. I wrote back a single sentence: any further attempts at contact will result in additional legal action. The letter stopped. Blake had an incident in prison last month. Got into a fight with another inmate and ended up in the medical wing with a broken arm. Liam is reportedly in solitary confinement after threatening a guard. Neither of them is having an easy time, which feels like cosmic justice given how hard they made Maya's life. Someone asked in the comments of my original post whether I ever felt guilty about what I did, whether the deception weighed on me. The honest answer is no. What I did was calculated and deliberate, and I would absolutely do it again. When the systems that are supposed to protect people fail, someone has to step up. I had the skills. I had the opportunity. And I had a sister whose life was hanging by a thread. Given the choice between following every rule and saving Maya, I chose Maya every single time. That's not something I'm ever going to apologize for. Maya told me recently that she feels like she's finally becoming the person she was meant to be, the person she was before Ethan and his family tried to break her. It took years of therapy, months of physical healing, and a complete reconstruction of her sense of self. But she's getting there. Slowly, steadily, beautifully. We still have dinner every Sunday. Still talk every day. Still occasionally confuse service workers who think they're experiencing a glitch in the matrix when they see us together. Being a twin means always having someone who understands you at a cellular level. Someone who shares your face and your history and your stubborn refusal to back down when things get hard. Maya and I have that bond, and nothing Ethan or his brothers did could break it. If anything, they made it stronger. So, that's the update. Blake and Liam are rotting in prison. Ethan is counting down the days until his release, knowing that Maya will never take him back. Maya is engaged to a wonderful man and building a career helping others escape the darkness she survived. And me? I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Doing exactly what I'm supposed to do. Protecting my family, fighting for justice, making sure the people who think they're untouchable learn that nobody is beyond reach. Thanks for reading. Thanks for caring. And if you're out there right now, trapped in a situation that feels hopeless, please know that it can get better, that there are people who will believe you, that escape is possible even when your abusers have convinced you otherwise. Maya is proof of that. What would you have done if your twin showed up at your door that night?